Go inside the Crimson Tide with your hosts Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, keeping you informed on everything Alabama. Tider Insider TV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports.
And good evening, everybody, and welcome in to Tider Insider TV, as mentioned, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. Alongside Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com, I'm WVUA 23 Sports Director Gary Harris. It's the SEC Championship edition of the show, but first, we're going to recap the Iron Bowl, and as is usually the case down at Jordan-Hare, boy, this game did not disappoint with the competitiveness from both teams. And, you know, Rodney, it was one of those games that Auburn and Alabama played a lot of down at Jordan-Hare. But for the second straight time, instead of Auburn coming out on top and cutting Alabama's heart out, it was the other way around. Let's just call it the Milroe miracle. The play is the grave digger. We'll get to that, but here it is. This is what did it. And before we recap the game per se, let's just start with a play that is going to be talked about for as long as Alabama and Auburn play football. 4th and goal from the 31. 4th and 31 is hard enough. But in this case, you can't get a first down. And Auburn only rushed 2. They had one guy kind of standing about mid-distance. They covered with 8. And somehow Isaiah Bond got to the corner of the end zone. Milroe saw him and threw a bullet, and Alabama won the game 27-24.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how these games down there keep following this similar script, Gary, but they do. And I mean, hopefully one day Alabama just go down there and make quick work of it. But, it happened the way it did. And, I thought Alabama started off really well. You see Roydell Williams right there. That opens the game at 7-0. They almost jump out 14-0. Kendrick Law has a touchdown call back. To me, Gary, I think – And look, I give Auburn a lot of credit. They played hard. They were coming off a very disappointing loss to New Mexico State. I expected them to play like that. But with that said, I think Alabama in this game was its own worst enemy. Made tons of mistakes. You have two touchdowns wiped off the board. I mean, that's enough to lose a game right there, especially a game of this magnitude. So, again, give Auburn credit. They played really, really well, but I didn't think Alabama played very well.
Yeah, here's the deal. If you're an Auburn fan, you got 4th and goal from the 31 and you're on defense, you expect to win the game. You should have won the game. I mean, I thought it was over. At the same time, as you alluded to, Rodney, Alabama, except for some self-inflicted wounds, I thought this game could have been a 2-score win for the Crimson Tide. They outgained Auburn by more than 120 yards. Alabama had 451 yards of total offense. They were balanced, 259 in the air, 192 on the ground. They had numerous opportunities, like they always seem to do down there, to score more points, whether it was Jalen Milroe crossing the line of scrimmage or a costly penalty or missed field goal or whatever it may have been. 2 touchdowns called back in the game. So when you make those many mistakes on the road, whether it's Auburn or anybody else, Rodney, you're really not going to be able to separate from your opponent. And that's what happened. With the way Auburn wanted to play, and you correct me if you think I'm wrong, I think if Alabama had got up, say, 14-0 early or got up by 2 or 3 scores, then Auburn can't run the ball. They can't shorten the game. They have to try to throw the ball to get back in the game, and I don't think they could have done it. And I think Alabama could have won the game going away. They didn't, but that's how I think things could have been different if you could clean it up. But we've been saying that about Alabama all year. As good as this team is, as talented as it is, as much fun as it is to watch, as hard as they play, and they play hard. They fight you all the way. They make mistakes that keep them from, I just think, reaching their potential or playing that clean game.
Yeah, and I thought, obviously the last few weeks they had played a little better in terms of, playing games that were more clean, if you will. But, it struck back. I mean, all the things that we've seen throughout the season, especially early in the season, they all kind of reappeared. Mm-hmm. I mean, the bad snap. Whatever those issues were. I know there's some talk that, Auburn was clapping and it might have caused some confusion with Seth McLaughlin. Whether that's true, I really don't know. But whatever it is, I think we saw a lot of the same issues that we've seen. Now, let's be clear. You can't see those issues come Saturday. No,
if you do, you'll get beat, and you may get beat handily. But let's talk about the positives. For all the talk about the voodoo at Auburn, Nick Saban now has a winning record at Jordan-Hare as head coach of the Crimson Tide. He's 5-4. They've won the last 2 games in a manner in which we expect Auburn to win. As I said, 2 years ago it was Bryce Young taking them 97, 98 yards with a minute and something to go and no timeouts to force the overtime. And then they won in 4 OTs and then this play. But even on this series, Rodney, it could have been a lot different. After the muff punt, which again, that was an opportunity for Alabama. But they've got 1st and goal at the 8-yard line. They gain a yard on 1st down. Then on 2nd down, you get the horrible snap. Then on third down, it was 3rd and 25 or 3rd and 26, and Jalen had a chance to run the ball there. And I don't know if he would have gotten it all, but he chose to throw it. He crossed the line of scrimmage, a 5-yard penalty, and then you get 4th and goal from the 31. You make the play to win the game and all as well. But it probably, again, with better execution, shouldn't have come down to that. I mean, you got 1st and goal at the 8-yard line.
No, like I said, I mean, it was a series of comedy of errors, But again, this team, with the mistakes that they made, still find ways to win games. I mean, this was unusual, obviously, very low percentage opportunity there. But they had plenty of opportunities to take control of this game. They didn't. And again, I give Auburn a lot of credit the way they played, coming off a very, very disappointing loss. But at the same time, we've seen Alabama go down and play this way before. We saw it, like you talked about, 2 years ago. But, Gary, it does seem like other times when they've gone down the week before the SEC championship game, when they haven't played very well, maybe this bodes well for this Saturday because they've come back and played really well in the SEC championship game.
And this note, this is the first time since Coach Bryant that Alabama's won 4 in a row against Auburn, and they get the game at Bryant-Denny next year, which we know how those games have gone. So Alabama's on a little bit of a streak. All right, let's get to coach talk. Nick Saban talked about Alabama's composure and emphasized that in games like the Iron Bowl and in the SEC championship game, players cannot let emotions take over. You have to keep the task at hand, and not get caught up in all the emotions of the game.
Everybody wants to make plays, but everybody's got to trust and believe. And if I do exactly what I'm supposed to do on this play, that's going to give the best opportunity for this play to be successful and for us to make plays within the system and the scheme. And for the most part, we've been doing a great job of that.
And, Rodney, some notes here, too. Milroe, the SEC Co-Offensive Player of the Week. Caden Proctor, the Co-Freshman of the Week. Will Reichert is now tied with 9 points in that game for the all-time leading scorer in NCAA history with 520 points with Navy's Keenan Reynolds. He's going to break that record before the season is over. Dallas Turner named a finalist for the Bednarik Award, and Reichert is also a finalist for the Groza Award. Composure, though, in this game. And let's get back to the end. Yeah, Alabama at times made mistakes, but I have to say this. Timeout before that play. Everybody was engaged. Everybody was on the sideline. They were calm, cool, and collected. That was not a Hail Mary. That was not a fluke. That was a designed play that Alabama executed. And Milroe was like he was the coolest guy on the field back there surveying the field. He went from right to left, and that was a BB that he threw to Isaiah Bond.
Yeah, it really was. And then on the flip side of that, Gary, you have to look at it and say, really what Auburn's decision was in terms of how they defended that play. They really didn't pressure Milroe. They dropped, 8 guys in the end zone, had 3 guys, had a spy. I mean, you kind of question the way they decided to defend that play because it gave Milroe plenty of time, gave guys opportunities to work that end zone a little bit, find Bond over there in the corner.
Another thing that I've always admired about Nick Saban is, no excuses, never has blamed officiating. Even after the game, Hugh Freeze was talking about a push-off on Bond. Saban didn't do that. What did you think of the officiating? You had the early missed call on the face mask that went Alabama's way, although it would have been offsetting penalties. I thought after that, if there, no officiating crew is perfect, but I thought, again, in this game with this particular crew who had been at the Tennessee game last year, might even been the Texas A&M game this year, that I thought Alabama came out on the short end of the stick on the officiating a little bit too.
Well, obviously they did miss some calls both ways, but at the same time, you're talking about Jermaine Burton on the sideline. I think, Gary, when you look at that, the referee standing right on the spot, calls him in, guy comes from the back, calls him out, they review it, and but it did even look to me on review that he was in. But there were other, obviously questionable calls, and I saw the blindside block on Burnip, the punter.
And right in front of the official.
Yeah, and I'm not really sure why that wasn't called. But again, in these games, Gary, there's a lot of calls that are missed both ways.
Yeah. And I'll say this, never apologize for winning, particularly in a rivalry game. Doesn't matter that Alabama was a 14.5-point favorite. Doesn't matter. One team wins, one team loses. And in rivalry games even more in particular. All the talk about recruiting and, culture and all that. On that Saturday, one Saturday a year when you play your rival, it's about the result. and Alabama gets the result that it wanted for the 4th straight time. And as I said, that hasn't occurred since Paul Bear Bryant was the head coach at Alabama. Well, still to come on Tider Insider TV, we'll preview the big one coming up this Saturday in Atlanta, the SEC Championship game. Also, men's basketball had mixed results over the weekend out at the Emerald Coast Classic in Destin. And we'll also be getting your phone calls, emails, and tweets. There's the phone number, as always, 205-348-WVUA. It's 348-9882. We'll be right back with the only show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide, Tider Insider TV.
No, you're focused on the whole package. I mean, you're trying to stop the entire unit, the entire group, as well as, they've got a really good defense and they've got tremendous special teams. There's no areas that you look at and go, ooh, that's a weakness, or ooh, they're not very good there. They got really good football players. They're well coached.
And welcome back to TITV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. Visit Tuscaloosa. Alongside Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. The Crimson Tide successfully navigated through the Iron Bowl, but now the Tide has to face the undefeated Georgia Bulldogs, winners of 29 in a row, and certainly Alabama's toughest game of the season. And I include Texas in that. Texas is really good. They beat Alabama, but this is the best opponent Alabama will face. The winner of the SEC Championship game, I still believe, obviously if it's Georgia, they're in. I still believe Alabama's going to get in if they win. Although we'll have news on the CFP rankings tonight a little bit later on in the show. But Georgia's 12-0. As I said, they snapped Alabama's SEC winning streak, a record of 28 set twice with Coach Bryant and Coach Stallings. Saban, if you're wondering, won 26 in a row. They're at 29. They beat their rival Georgia Tech 31-23. It wasn't a blowout, but Georgia Tech under Brent Key is a good game. It was in Atlanta. But the bottom line is, Rodney, this team, they haven't looked back since losing to Alabama in that SEC Championship game 2 years ago. They got payback in the National Championship game, and they haven't lost since. I mean, this is a complete football team. Offense, defense, special teams. They've got size, they've got speed, they've got athleticism, they've got depth, they've got good coaching, they've got, symmetry and chemistry, and everything's been in place for a while now. You're going to play them in Atlanta. In their backyard, although Nick Saban's record there at Mercedes-Benz Stadium is unbeaten and only one loss in Atlanta overall as the head coach at Alabama. But still, this is quite the challenge.
Yes, it is. And they're a little bit different maybe than they have been. I think you look at them offensively, Gary, and they've been good the last couple of years with Stetson Bennett. But Carson Beck's doing a fantastic job. I mean, he's completing, around 70% of his passes. You know what? They throw for 310 yards a game. I mean, they've really diversified their offense, got a lot of weapons. There's Oscar Delp right there. He's one of their talented tight ends. Of course, Brock Bowers is the best in the country. They've got some good running backs. This is like you said, it's a well-balanced team, really well-schooled. There you see Brock Bowers. And defensively, maybe they're not quite as good as they have been, but they're still really, really good.
They are, and as I said, we've seen it here with Nick Saban. I think the greatest thing about Nick Saban is he's lost so few games because it isn't always about doing what you need to do to win the game. It's doing what you need to do to not lose the game. And I think that's what Alabama's been so good at, and Georgia's good at that. They just don't beat themselves. If you're going to beat them, you got to go out and earn it, and they're usually more talented than the opposition. That's why they've won 29 in a row. I do think Alabama, though, has enough talent to win this game.
There's no question about that. I mean, I think Alabama certainly, when you look at these two teams, I think they're probably the two most talented teams in the country. Actually, I say this is the game of the year in college football. It's probably equivalent to a national championship game when you're talking about the two best teams. I truly believe that, Gary. Does Alabama, like you said, have a legitimate shot to win the game? Of course they do. Again, I'm going to say this. It's how does Alabama execute? They cannot turn the ball over.
I worry about Alabama's defensive line against their offensive line is incredible. I mean, they don't give up sacks. They get pushed in the run game. Alabama's defensive line has got to hold up and make plays and disrupt Beck, because if they get in a rhythm with their running game and you allow Beck to stand back there, he will pick you apart.
He's only been sacked 8 times. I mean, that's a real concern. How is Alabama going to get pressure on Carson Beck? Because like you said, and they've got weapons and they're running free everywhere. I mean, if you give him time, he can pick you apart. All
right, our predictions coming later on. I think on the other side, though, Jalen Milroe is going to be a problem for Georgia. I mean, especially when he's got that green turf in front of him, he takes it. I mean, he's hard to defend, and it could be some points in this game. All right, Rodney, we'll get to our predictions later on. Let's move on to basketball. The Crimson Tide was in Destin, Florida over the weekend, taking part in the Emerald Coast Classic. Tide suffered his first loss of the season as they got beat by Ohio State in that opening game. Ohio State shot the lights out, and they outplayed Alabama. But Alabama did bounce back the next night. They scored 99 against Oregon and won 99-91. They're 5-1 on the season. They're averaging nearly 100 points a game. They play Clemson tonight at 8:30 in the ACC-SEC Challenge at Coleman Coliseum. That game will be on ESPN. Rodney, just some quick takeaways from this Alabama basketball team. Coach Oates says, yes, we can score. We can score with anybody. He is not happy at all with how they're defending right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously an issue. And, I mean, like you said, Ohio State came out, shot the lights out. And, it's November. I mean, you have a lot of new players. You're still building that chemistry. Hopefully that defense will develop. It's going to have to. But you're right, they can score. All
right, when we come back on TITV, we're going to get into some phone calls. That phone number, as always, 205-348-9882. We want to hear from you. We'll be back after this. All right, normally we have our Bama in the NFL segment. A little tight on time this week, and we want to get to phone calls, so we're going to skip it this week. But you know it, every Sunday, Bama in the NFL, it's everywhere. All right, Rodney, let's get to Sammy up in Walker County leading us off. Hey, Sammy.
Hey, Gary, Rodney. Great job, guys. After 6 heart attacks and 10 bypasses, I'm just proud I can be like Jalen Milroe. Roll Tide, Gary and Rodney. But my thing I wanted to say, guys, is I hate to beat a dead horse to death, but I think the review of the replay system is pathetic. They're going to have it needs revamped completely.
Yeah, Sammy. Well, we'll take it from there because you're right. I agree with you 100%. This is how poorly it's gone. Is that when they go to review, I think people on either side of the call have no confidence that they can get it right. Jermaine Burton should have been a catch on the field. He was clearly in on the replay. I don't know what the replay official was looking at to say he can't overturn that call. Why? I'm with Sammy. Why have it? If you're not going to, I have no confidence, and I think most fans feel the same way, that they're going to get it right on the replay.
They missed that one.
Missed twice. They missed. That's what I'm saying. I mean,
look, here's what I really believe. Had the back referee not overturned the call on the field, it was initially called a completion. Then I don't think the call gets overturned.
But you know what? That shouldn't matter. If you see the replay and you see when it's frozen that his foot's in bounds, that's why you have replay. If you don't want to show up the officials, then just let them call it on the field and get rid of it. They don't get it right half the time on replay. I'm with you. If you can tell, it gets me worked up. All right, J.K. in Tuscaloosa. Hey, J.K.
Hey, good evening, fellas. I appreciate you taking my call. I got a couple of quick questions for you, and the first one being, where will the loser of the championship game go to play?
Okay, J.K., it's a great question. I think it's going to depend on a lot. I don't know if it's built in already that they're going to bowl. I don't know, to be honest with you. They're going to go to a New Year's Day 6 bowl. That's all I know.
Yeah, that's all I know too. Yeah. And look, I mean, Georgia, they're talking could lose this game and still get in. So we'll have to see.
Yeah, let's get through Saturday. But that's a good question, J.K. We'll check on it. I just haven't. My focus right now is on that game for the SEC championship. And, Ronnie, I want to say this real quick. And I was on the Nick Saban show last week, and I wanted to ask him about this, and I didn't get a chance. He had to leave a little early. I hate the fact the SEC championship's been diminished. 2 years ago, Alabama won the SEC championship. That should be a big deal. I've heard people in my business this week talking about, well, if Alabama hadn't won the Iron Bowl, they wouldn't have anything to play for. Yeah, they still would have been playing for an SEC championship. The SEC championship still should be a big deal. It's hard to win.
Yeah, it really is. And you know what? Like I said, Gary, I look at this game right here. I look at it as the two best teams in the country. This is the game of the year in college football, and I think everybody knows that.
Yeah, whether you go to the playoff or not. You win the SEC championship, that'll be 9 for Nick Saban at Alabama. That should be celebrated. All right, we'll be back with more phone calls and emails right after this. We checked in on the men. What about the Alabama women? They're looking good. They're having a great start to the season, one of their best ever. They got their first win over a top 25 team since the 2021-2022 season when they beat Louisville 78-73 at the Betty Chancellor Classic in Katy, Texas over the weekend. Sheila Ashley Barker led the way with 18. They did lose to Gonzaga in a game, but they bounced back and beat Liberty. They're 6-1 on the season and looking good. They will play Syracuse on Thursday night up at Syracuse on the ACC Network. All right, let's get back and do our email question of the day, brought to you by KDM Service Corporation. KDM Service Corporation serving your family like our family. And our email question today comes from Twitter. How will Bama slow down Georgia? Will Bama run Milroe like the Tide did against LSU? Rodney?
Well, that's a great question because, look, Alabama's going to have to score some points. This is going to be like you said, it's difficult to slow down LSU. Difficult to slow down LSU, but this offense right here, it's right up there with LSU. It's probably, Gary, in some ways more versatile. It's going to be a real difficult challenge. I think, again, Alabama, Milroe's going to have to play a fantastic game.
Indeed, he will, and the Tide will have to play fantastic as well. All right, we're going to get to an email question before we hit the break and come back with our predictions. We're going to have time to squeeze one in. Let me take a look at it if we don't mind. Okay, do you think Jalen Milroe will enter the draft? It's from Maurice in Fairfield. Rodney, my gut feeling is he'll come back. But if Alabama were to close, they beat Georgia and they get in the playoff, they win a national championship, his stock is high. I wouldn't rule it out. He is eligible, but my feeling is he'll be back at Alabama next year.
No, I kind of share your feeling right now. But, last year this time, I didn't think Anthony Richardson would come out either. Now, again, they're different situations. But I think Milroe's every bit the athlete, maybe a better athlete. I think he's a better quarterback. I really do. I think he's better right now than at the end of the year Richardson was at Florida. So I'm not saying it won't happen, but I'm kind of like you. I have a feeling he'll be back.
All right. Thanks for the phone calls, emails, and tweets. We'll be back with our score predictions on the big game. You'll want to stay tuned for this. That's next. Welcome back to TITV. It's score prediction time, SEC championship game. Rodney, lead us off.
Well, I look at these two teams and I say they're very similar statistically. I think you look at Georgia, they may have the best player on the field in Brock Bowers. But I tell you, Alabama has the most dynamic player. I think LSU, Jalen Milroe shows up, Alabama 31-28.
I like it, but if I am being honest on who I think is going to win the game, and please understand, I want Alabama to win the game, okay? But I'm making a prediction based on what I'm going to think. Good news is, last time I picked this game 2 years ago, I picked Georgia. Alabama won. I'm going with the Bulldogs because I think they are the better team. Not by much, but they're playing in Atlanta. They've won 29 in a row. I'll take Georgia 27-24, Rod. And, again, I hope I'm wrong, and I probably am.
I know you, and I know why you picked them.
All right. Reverse mojo is what he's saying. All right, we're going to leave you with the Alabama volleyball team closing out the season in style, winning their senior day match against Texas A&M. Don't forget, you can catch a replay of the show tonight at 10:30 on WVUA 23 or find it anytime at WVUA23.com. For Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Good night, everybody. Roll Tide.